Ambassador walked slowly into the grand chamber of the Galactic Council. Her footsteps echoed against the polished stone floor that was older than human civilization itself. Around her, 12 different alien species watched from their elevated platforms. Some looked bored. Others looked at her like she was an insect that had wandered into their home. Kept her back straight and her face calm. She had trained for this moment her entire life. Earth was counting on her. The grand chamber was enormous. The ceiling stretched so high that clouds actually formed near the top, drifting lazily in the artificial atmosphere. Massive pillars carved with the history of 1,000 conquered worlds lined the walls. Every surface screamed one message: "You are small, and we are mighty." High Arbiter sat at the center of the council's platform. He was a species that had dominated galactic politics for over 6,000 years. His body was covered in a hard shell that glittered with ceremonial metals. 4 arms folded across his chest. His compound eyes reflected its image 100 times over. "The human ambassador may approach," announced. His voice was actually a series of clicks and whistles, but his translator turned them into cold, formal words. Walked forward until she stood in the speaking circle at the chamber's center. She was completely surrounded by alien delegates, with their massive turtle-like shells, the ethereal whose skin glowed with soft bioluminescence, the crystalline who communicated through vibrations in their mineral bodies, dozens more, each representing civilizations that had existed when humans were still living in caves. "Humanity petitions for access to the Nexus Corridor trade routes," said clearly. "We wish to establish commerce with the outer reaches and participate fully in galactic society." Mandibles clicked together in what she recognized as amusement. "The Council has reviewed your petition at length," he said. "We have debated the merits of allowing such a young species access to our most valuable resources." Waited, she could feel the tension in the room. Several delegates were trying to hide their smiles. "The Council grants conditional approval," continued. Felt a brief moment of hope before she saw the look in his compound eyes. "The conditions are as follows," he said, and there was obvious pleasure in his voice now. "First, humanity will provide 60% of all rare mineral output from Earth and your colonies to the Council, at prices we determine." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Even some of the other delegates seemed surprised by this demand. "Second, humanity will grant exclusive licensing of all genetic research to Council-approved institutions. Your species' unusual adaptability has been noted. This information is too valuable to leave in inexperienced hands." His jaw tightened, but she said nothing. "Third, and most importantly," leaned forward, "Council observers will be permanently stationed within all human governmental bodies. They will have full access to your military installations, research facilities, and political proceedings. This is for your own protection, of course. Young species often make dangerous mistakes without proper guidance." The chamber fell silent, understood exactly what was happening. The Council wasn't offering a trade deal. They were offering slavery with extra steps. She had heard stories about this, how they had been forced to accept similar terms 300 years ago and were still struggling under Council control, how they had been completely absorbed into the economic system, their culture slowly dying as they became nothing more than workers for their masters. This was how the Council operated. They controlled the only known method of fast travel between stars, the ancient Nexus corridors. Any species that wanted to expand had to go through them, and the Council made sure that access came with chains attached. Delegate of the Hegemony spoke up. "These terms are quite reasonable," he said, his voice rumbling like stones grinding together. "The accepted similar conditions when we first joined galactic society. It is simply how things are done." "Indeed," added another delegate, a spindly creature whose name couldn't remember. "Humanity should be grateful for any access at all. Many young species wait centuries for such an opportunity." looked around the chamber. She saw it clearly now. This wasn't a negotiation. This was a trap that had been sprung on countless species before. The Council held all the power, and they knew it. Without the Nexus corridors, humanity would be confined to a tiny corner of the galaxy forever. She thought about Earth, about the billions of people who had worked so hard to reach the stars, about her grandmother who had been among the first humans to walk on Mars, about her own daughter who dreamed of seeing alien worlds. All of that hope, all of that progress, and it came down to this: bow to the Council or watch humanity slowly suffocate in isolation. "These terms are unacceptable," said quietly. The chamber went still. "Unacceptable," repeated the word like it was something strange and unfamiliar. "I do not think you understand your situation, Ambassador. You have no alternatives. The Nexus corridors are the only viable path to the outer reaches. Without our approval, your species has nowhere to go." "I understand my situation perfectly," replied, "and I will relay your terms to Earth." Mandibles clicked rapidly. "You should also relay a warning. The Council does not make offers twice. If humanity refuses our generous terms, you will find the galaxy a very cold and empty place." Met his compound eyes without flinching. "You will have our answer within one standard rotation." She turned and walked out of the chamber. Behind her, she could hear the delegates already laughing. They had seen this before. Every young species protested at first. Every young species eventually surrendered. But as boarded her ship and set course for Earth, she allowed herself a small smile. The Council had made a critical error. They had assumed humanity had no options. They had no idea what was waiting for them. 60 years ago, when humanity first detected signals from alien civilizations, the governments of Earth had made a decision. They would reach out to the stars, yes. They would seek peaceful contact. But they would also prepare for the possibility that the universe was not as friendly as they hoped. For 6 decades, in hidden facilities across Earth and Mars and a dozen secret stations throughout the solar system, humanity's greatest minds had been working on something: an insurance policy, a backup plan. The Council had all the power, they believed. They controlled the only roads between the stars. They were wrong. And they were about to find out just how wrong they were. Sent a single coded message ahead to Earth Command. It contained only 2 words: Plan Prometheus. The message traveled at the speed of light toward home. And in the Grand Chamber, the Galactic Council continued celebrating their latest conquest, completely unaware that the galaxy was about to change forever. 48 hours passed. The Galactic Council expected to receive a humble acceptance of their terms. Perhaps some minor negotiation around the edges, a bit of face-saving language that would allow the humans to pretend they had some dignity left. But ultimately, submission. That was how it always went. When Ambassador returned to the Grand Chamber, she was not alone. Admiral Wei walked on her right side. He was the commander of the United Earth Defense Force, a man who had spent 40 years preparing for conflicts he hoped would never come. His uniform was simple and practical, nothing like the elaborate decorations worn by Council military leaders. Doctor walked on her left side. She was Earth's leading expert in theoretical physics, a woman whose mind had unlocked secrets of the universe that even the ancient species had never discovered. She carried a small device in her hands, no bigger than a book. The Council delegates watched them approach with various expressions. His mandibles clicked slowly, rhythmically, like a predator savoring its moment of victory. "Ambassador," he announced, "you have returned to present Earth's acceptance of our terms." It was not a question. In his mind, there was no other possibility. Stopped in the speaking circle, Wei and Doctor stood beside her, flanking her like guards. "High Arbiter said," and her voice was calm and clear, "Humanity has reviewed your terms carefully. We have discussed them at the highest levels of our government. We have considered every implication." She paused, "and we respectfully decline." The silence that followed was absolute. It stretched on for several long seconds. Could almost hear the minds of 12 alien species trying to process what she had said. His mandibles stopped clicking. His compound eyes seemed to narrow. "You decline," he repeated, as if saying the words would help him understand them. "We decline," confirmed. "You cannot decline," said, and there was genuine confusion in his translated voice. "This is not how this works. You need the Nexus corridors. Without them, you have no access to the wider galaxy. You will remain trapped in your tiny corner of space forever." "With respect, High Arbiter," replied, "we anticipated this possibility." She nodded to Doctor, who stepped forward and activated her small device. A holographic display flickered to life in the center of the chamber. It showed a complex diagram of swirling energies and mathematical equations that made several delegates lean forward with sudden interest. "For the past 60 years," Doctor began, "humanity has been working on an alternative method of faster-than-light travel. We call it the fold drive." The chamber erupted in noise. Delegates shouted questions and objections over each other. The vibrated so intensely that small crystals fell from their bodies. "Impossible," Delegate of the boomed. "The Nexus corridors were created by the precursors themselves. No species has ever developed independent faster-than-light travel. It cannot be done." "The precursors were brilliant," Doctor agreed, "but they were not gods. They found one solution to the problem of interstellar travel. We found another." "You are bluffing," snarled. "This is a desperate trick by a desperate species." Admiral Wei stepped forward. His voice was quiet, but it carried throughout the chamber. 3 hours ago, the United Earth Defense Force vessel Magellan departed from Earth orbit. It activated its fold drive and traveled across the galaxy in a single jump. It arrived at your Andromeda relay station 7 minutes later. He let those words sink in. "A journey that would take your fastest ships 11 months through the Nexus corridors. 7 minutes for us." The chamber fell silent again. But this silence was different. It was the silence of creatures realizing that the ground beneath them was not as solid as they thought. "The Magellan is currently broadcasting a friendly greeting to your station commanders," Admiral continued. "Its crew is waving at them through the viewports. I am told the commanders seem quite surprised." His compound eyes flickered. He turned to one of his aides and spoke rapidly in his native language. The aide away to verify this impossible claim. The wait was agonizing. Council delegates whispered urgently to each other. Some were already looking at the human delegation with new expressions: fear, respect, calculation. The aide returned. He approached and spoke quietly, but the High Arbiter's reaction told everyone everything they needed to know. His entire body went rigid. His mandibles froze mid-click. It is confirmed," he said, and his voice was barely a whisper. "There is a human vessel at Andromeda Station. It appeared from empty space without using any known corridor. The crew is. They are asking if the station has any food they can trade for." Despite the tension, Doctor smiled. "They are always hungry, those pilots." Turned back to the human delegation. For the first time in his 3-century career, he had no idea what to say. Spoke into that silence. "Humanity did not come to the stars seeking conflict," she said. "We came seeking friendship, trade, knowledge. We hoped to find partners among the older civilizations. Instead, we found those who would make us slaves." She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of every delegate. "So we prepared. We worked in secret for 60 years. We built something the galaxy has never seen, and we did it because we learned a hard lesson from our own history." Her voice hardened. "Those who control the roads control everything, so we decided to build our own roads." Found his voice. "The Council, We can reconsider our terms, perhaps a more equitable arrangement." "No," said simply. "The time for negotiation was before you tried to make us your servants. You showed us exactly who you are when you thought we had no options. Now that we do have options, you want to talk." She shook her head slowly. "We are not interested in your sudden change of heart. We know what it means. It means nothing." She turned to address the full chamber one final time. "To those species who treated humanity with respect before we revealed our capabilities, our doors remain open. We will share the fold drive technology with anyone who wishes to build a partnership based on equality and mutual benefit." Several delegates straightened in their seats. The representative's skin glowed brighter. "To those who only value us now because we have proven ourselves useful," continued, looking directly at, "you will find that humanity has very long memories and very long patience." She nodded to Wei and Doctor. Together, they turned and walked out of the grand chamber. Behind them, the Galactic Council sat in stunned silence. For 10,000 years, they had controlled the galaxy through control of the Nexus corridors. They had crushed rebellions, absorbed civilizations, and built an empire on the simple fact that they held the keys to the stars. Now a species that had been spacefaring for barely a century had just made those keys worthless. The universe would never be the same. The next 72 hours changed galactic politics more than the previous 10,000 years combined. Ambassador had barely returned to the human embassy when the first request came. It was from delegate of the collective. She wanted a private meeting immediately, away from council eyes. They met in a small garden on the embassy grounds. Had always liked They were a gentle species, their bodies thin and graceful, their skin capable of glowing with beautiful colors that reflected their emotions. They had been among the few delegates who did not laugh when humanity first arrived in galactic society. "Your fold drive," said, her skin flickering with barely contained excitement. "Would humanity consider sharing it?" Studied her carefully. "That depends. Would they be willing to leave the council?" His glow dimmed slightly. "You ask much. The council would not take kindly to such a betrayal." "The council has kept your people confined to a handful of systems for 3 centuries, replied. "Every time you try to expand, there is another environmental study that never completes, another safety review that finds problems that do not exist. They are slowly strangling you." Was silent for a long moment. Her skin shifted through several colors that could not interpret. "You see clearly for such a young species," finally said. "We see clearly because we almost walked into the same trap." By the end of the week, 14 species had reached out to humanity. Some were council members looking to escape centuries of subtle oppression. Others were civilizations that had never been allowed to join the council at all, kept weak and isolated by careful manipulation of the corridor access. They were among the most eager. They were a proud people who had been forced into humiliating terms 300 years ago. When their ambassador met with, there were tears in his 4 eyes. "For so long, we accepted that this was simply how things were," he said. "We taught our children that submission to the council was the only path to survival. Now you show us that survival does not have to mean slavery." Took his hand. "We show you that you always had the strength to be free. You simply needed the tools." While humanity was building its new coalition, the council was scrambling. High Arbiter called emergency sessions every day. He tried threats. He tried promises. He tried subtle manipulation. Nothing worked. Every day, another species announced that they were in talks with the humans. The problem was simple. The Council's entire power structure was based on control of the Nexus corridors. They controlled who could travel where. They controlled trade by controlling transportation. They built their empire not through direct conquest, but through making themselves essential. Humanity had just made them unnecessary. "We must act before this spreads further," declared in a closed council session. "These humans are destroying the foundations of galactic order." "And how do you propose we act?" asked Delegate. "We cannot threaten them with corridor access anymore. They do not need our corridors." "Then we use other means." The room went quiet. Everyone knew what was suggesting. Direct military action was extremely rare in galactic politics. The last major war had been over 2,000 years ago. Since then, the Council had maintained control through economic pressure and political manipulation. But if those tools no longer worked? "The humans are young," continued. "Their military is small. Their technology, aside from this fold drive, is inferior to ours. If we strike quickly, decisively, we can crush them before they spread their poison any further." Several delegates shifted uncomfortably, but no one objected. While the council plotted, called her first meeting of what she was calling the Coalition of Free Worlds. 17 species attended, either in person or through secure communication. They gathered in the human embassy, seated in a circle without platforms or elevated positions. Everyone was equal. "We are not here to build another council," told them. "We are not here to replace one master with another. We are here to build something new, a partnership based on equality, mutual benefit, and respect." "Fine words," said the representative, a being whose species had been under council economic control for so long that they had nearly forgotten what freedom felt like. "But what do you actually propose?" Nodded. "First, we share the fold drive technology with all coalition members. Not sell it, share it. Every species that joins us will have the ability to travel anywhere in the galaxy without asking anyone's permission." Murmurs of surprise rippled through the room. The representative's skin glowed bright with amazement. "You would give away your greatest advantage?" asked. "Our greatest advantage is not the technology," replied. "Our greatest advantage is that we understand something the Council never learned. True power does not come from keeping others weak. It comes from making your allies strong." The ambassador leaned forward. "And what do you ask in return?" "Mutual defense agreements. If one of us is attacked, all of us respond. Fair trade terms based on market value, not exploitation. And a commitment to peaceful expansion that respects the rights of all sentient beings." The room was silent as the gathered representatives processed this offer. It was unlike anything they had ever experienced. The Council's philosophy was simple. Power flows upward, benefits flow upward, everyone serves those above them. Humanity was proposing the opposite: power shared, benefits shared, no one above anyone else. "This is unprecedented," the representative finally said. "Yes," agreed. "It is. That is exactly the point." One by one, the representatives signaled their agreement. The Coalition of Free Worlds was born. News of the coalition spread quickly. More species joined every week. The Council's control was slipping like sand through their fingers. Watched his carefully built empire crumbling and felt something he had not experienced in centuries: fear. He had one option left, one terrible, desperate option. In secret, he began gathering military forces. Ships that had not seen combat in generations were activated. Weapons that had been locked away for thousands of years were brought out of storage. If the Council could not control the galaxy through manipulation, they would control it through force. And the first target would be the source of all their problems. Humanity had no idea what was coming. 6 months after humanity revealed the fold drive, the Coalition of Free Worlds had grown to 23 member species. Former council members, long-oppressed civilizations, and newly discovered peoples had all joined together under the simple principle that cooperation was better than domination. The galaxy was changing, and for the first time it was changing for the better. Doctor stood on the bridge of the medical ship Hope's Promise. Through the viewport, she could see the brown and green world of Prime below. A terrible plague had struck the planet 2 months ago. Traditional medicine could not stop it. The Council had refused to help, claiming that they had forfeited their right to assistance by joining the coalition. Humanity's answer was different. Within 2 weeks of learning about the plague, Earth had assembled a fleet of medical ships carrying doctors, medicines, and equipment. Doctor had volunteered to lead the mission personally. "We are approaching the designated landing zone," the ship's captain announced. "Authorities are ready to receive us." Doctor nodded. "Tell them we are honored to help. Tell them this is what coalition members do for each other." The medical convoy consisted of 7 ships carrying supplies and personnel. It was completely unarmed. The idea that medical vessels might need weapons had not occurred to anyone. Why would anyone attack doctors trying to save lives? They were about to find out. The first warning came from the navigation officer. "Contact! Multiple ships emerging from the nearby asteroid field." Captain's face went pale. "How many?" 40, no more. I am counting at least 45 vessels. They are armed. Heavy weapons signatures." Doctor felt her heart stop. "Identification. Council military vessels. Design, they are hailing us." The main flickered to life. A commander appeared, his compound eyes reflecting the bridge lighting. "Human vessels," he said. "You are in violation of Council space. You will surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded." Captain stepped forward. "This is a medical convoy on a humanitarian mission. We are responding to a health crisis on Prime. We carry no weapons and pose no threat." "You carry coalition technology," the commander replied. "That is threat enough. You will surrender or you will be destroyed." Doctor grabbed the captain's arm. "They cannot be serious. Attacking medical ships, that is a war crime by any civilization standards." But even as she spoke, she could see the Council ships moving into attack formation. Their weapons were powering up. This was not a bluff. "Please," Captain said, his voice desperate. "We have 700 medical personnel on these ships, doctors, nurses, scientists. Their only purpose is to save lives." The commander's mandibles clicked once. "You should have thought of that before your species decided to challenge the natural order of things." The first volley of weapons fire tore through the Hope's promise before anyone could react. The ship shuddered violently. Alarms screamed. Emergency lights flashed red. "Hull breach, decks 7 through 12. We are losing atmosphere." Doctor was thrown against a console as the ship lurched. She could hear screaming from somewhere below. Fire suppression systems activated. Through the chaos, she could see the other convoy ships being torn apart. "We need to evacuate," someone shouted. "There is no time," Captain replied, his voice hollow with despair. "Their weapons are too powerful. We cannot." The second volley hit the bridge directly. 700 crew members died in the attack. Every ship in the convoy was destroyed. They did not even bother to confirm kills. They simply fired until nothing remained but debris, then vanished back into the asteroid field. Among the dead was Doctor, the woman whose genius had given humanity the stars. When news reached Earth, the world went silent. People stopped in the streets, staring at screens showing the debris field that had once been a mercy mission. Flags were lowered. Monuments were darkened. For the first time in a century, the entire human species shared a single emotion. Grief, and then slowly something harder. Admiral Way stood before the United Earth Assembly. His face was carved from stone. His voice was quiet, but it carried to every corner of the chamber. "We came to the stars seeking partners," he said. "We reached out with open hands to every species we encountered. When we developed the fold drive, we did not keep it for ourselves. We shared it freely with any who asked." He paused, looking down at his hands. "And they killed our people for it." The chamber was absolutely silent. 700 souls, Way continued. Doctors, nurses, scientists, people who had dedicated their lives to healing, to helping others. They were carrying medicine to the sick. Their only crime was showing compassion. His voice hardened. Doctor was among them, the woman who gave humanity freedom, the woman whose brilliance unlocked the secrets of the universe. She died trying to save strangers on a distant world because that is who she was. That is who we are. He looked up directly into the broadcast cameras. He knew that trillions of beings across the galaxy were watching. The Council has made its choice. They have shown the galaxy exactly what they are. Not leaders, not protectors, butchers who murder the innocent to maintain their power. Way straightened to his full height. Now humanity makes our choice. In the coalition worlds, representatives watched the broadcast with growing dread. They knew humanity's military power. They had seen what the fold drive could do when applied to warships. If humans decided to strike back with force, the resulting war could burn across the galaxy for generations. But Ambassador was not watching the broadcast. She was already in motion, flying from coalition world to coalition world, meeting with leaders in person. Her message was always the same. "We will not become what we hate," she told the Council. "We will not answer murder with murder, but we will answer, and our answer will shake the stars." The Ambassador, grief-stricken over the deaths of those who came to save his people, asked the obvious question. "What answer can you give that does not involve war?" Smiled, but there was nothing warm in it. The Council believes their power comes from their military, their ancient technology, their 10,000-year head start on the rest of us. They are wrong. Their power comes from one thing only, the belief that they are necessary. She leaned forward. "We are going to show the galaxy that they are not necessary at all. And then we are going to watch them collapse under the weight of their own irrelevance." The Ambassador studied her for a long moment. "That is a gentle form of revenge." "It is not revenge," replied. "Revenge would be burning their worlds. This is something else. This is teaching the universe a lesson it will never forget." She stood up. "The Council wanted to control everything. They will end up controlling nothing. And the best part, we will not fire a single shot to make it happen." The human response came not with fire and fury, but with silence. 3 days after the attack on the medical convoy, every human-operated fold relay station went dark. Coalition trade routes that depended on human navigation expertise shut down. Every technological exchange program stopped. Humanity simply. And then they shared one final piece of technology with their coalition allies. A device that could detect and block Nexus corridor travel within a given region of space. Within 2 weeks, the Council found itself completely isolated. High Arbiter stood in the Grand Chamber, surrounded by the remaining Council delegates. The massive room felt empty now. Several species had abandoned their seats to join the coalition. Others had simply stopped attending, no longer seeing the point. "This is unacceptable." Mandibles clicked furiously. "We must demand that the humans restore corridor access immediately." "Demand with what?" Delegate asked wearily. The old looked exhausted. "Our fleets cannot reach them. Our communications go unanswered. They have simply stopped talking to us." "Then we attack. We still have military superiority." "Our ships cannot move," another delegate pointed out. "The corridors near all strategic points have been blocked. Our fleet is scattered across 1,000 systems with no way to concentrate. We would need months just to assemble a task force." Slammed his forearms against his platform. "There must be something we can do." But there was nothing. The Council had built its entire civilization around control of the Nexus corridors. Their economy depended on trade that flowed through those corridors. Their military doctrine assumed they could always move forces quickly from system to system. Their political power came from being the gatekeepers of interstellar travel. Now the gates were closed, and they were trapped on the wrong side. Reports came in daily, each one worse than the last. Food shortages on colony worlds that depended on imports, manufacturing centers grinding to a halt without raw materials, communication systems failing as maintenance ships could not reach relay stations. 1 month after the withdrawal, the first Council world experienced famine. 3 months after, civil unrest had spread to a dozen systems. 6 months after, the hegemony formally requested emergency aid from the coalition. Ambassador received the delegation personally. Delegate, once so confident in the Grand Chamber, now looked broken. His shell had lost its shine. His voice trembled. "We are dying," he said simply. "Our people are starving, our infrastructure is collapsing. We beg you, please help us." Studied him for a long moment. 6 months ago, your council murdered 700 innocent people, doctors and nurses trying to save lives. You called it maintaining the natural order. Lowered his massive head. "I know, I cannot defend what was done. I can only tell you that the people did not choose that attack. We did not even know about it until it was over, acted alone. And yet, you did nothing to stop him. You said nothing when he proposed it in your secret sessions." The old was silent. There was no defense to offer. Let him suffer for a moment longer. Then she spoke again, and her voice was softer. "The coalition does not punish innocent people for the crimes of their leaders. We will We will send food, medicine, engineers. We will help you rebuild." Looked up, his eyes filled with desperate hope. "Truly." "Truly, but there are conditions." "Anything." "First, the formally withdraw from the Council and acknowledge its dissolution. Second, you turn over all those responsible for the attack on our medical convoy to face justice. Third, you commit to the principles of the coalition: equality, cooperation, mutual respect." Nodded rapidly. "Yes, yes, all of it we agree." "Then welcome to the coalition of free worlds." One by one, the remaining Council species followed the same path. Some surrendered quickly, desperate for relief from their isolation. Others held out longer, their pride refusing to let them bend. But in the end, they all came. All except the refused to surrender. Even as his empire crumbled around him, even as his own people began to starve, he clung to his position. He broadcast defiant messages across the galaxy, promising vengeance against humanity and all who had betrayed the Council. No one was listening anymore. The final chapter of the Dominion came not with a battle, but with a quiet revolution. The common people of Prime, tired of suffering for their leader's pride, rose up and removed him from power. They delivered him to coalition authorities to face trial for the murder of the medical convoy crew. At his trial was unrepentant. "You have destroyed 10,000 years of order," he snarled at the assembled judges. "You have undone the work of countless generations. The galaxy will descend into chaos without council guidance." Ambassador was present as an observer. She stood and addressed the court. "The accused speaks of order," she said. "But what order did the council maintain? The order of the strong crushing the weak, the order of a few species living in comfort while countless others were kept in poverty and despair, the order of control, manipulation, and fear." She turned to face directly. "That order is ended, not because we destroyed it, but because we showed everyone that it was never necessary. The galaxy does not need masters, it needs partners, and now it has them." Was found guilty and sentenced to spend the rest of his life on a prison world, alone with his memories of an empire that no longer existed. 50 years later, the Grand Chamber still stood, but it had been transformed completely. Gone were the elevated platforms that once placed powerful species above weaker ones. In their place was a circular arrangement where every representative sat at the same level. Gone were the intimidating monuments to council conquest. In their place were memorials to those who had died building a better galaxy. The chamber had been renamed the Hall of Equals. At its center stood a simple statue. It depicted a human hand, open and extended in friendship. The inscription beneath it read, "We came in peace. We were answered with contempt. We responded with patience. And in the end, we built something better together." Ambassador, now an old woman, visited the hall on the 50th anniversary of the coalition's founding. She was accompanied by her granddaughter, a young woman named in honor of the scientist who had given humanity the stars. "Did you ever regret it?" Young asked as they stood before the statue. "Not striking back when they attacked the convoy, not using our power to crush them." Smiled, every day at first. The desire for revenge was overwhelming. They had murdered my friend. They had murdered hundreds of innocent people. Part of me wanted to burn their worlds and make them pay. She reached out and touched the stone hand of the statue. But then I remembered something my grandmother told me, back when humanity had not yet left Earth. She said that the measure of a civilization is not how it treats its friends, but how it treats its enemies. Anyone can be kind to those who are kind to them. True greatness lies in being kind to those who do not deserve it. Young considered this, and were the council species kind to us after we helped them? Some were not. That is not the point. Turned to face her granddaughter. The point is that we showed the galaxy who we are, not conquerors, not masters, partners, friends. The species that offered an open hand even after that hand was slapped away. She gestured at the hall around them, filled with representatives from hundreds of worlds working together in peace. This is our legacy, not the fold drive, though that changed everything, not our military power, though we have it. This, the proof that there is another way, that civilization can be built on cooperation instead of control. Young nodded slowly. "The stars remember," she said, quoting the famous words her grandmother had spoken half a century ago. Smiled, "They always will." Outside the Hall of Equals, ships from 1,000 worlds crossed the galaxy in peace. Trade flowed freely along routes that no one controlled. Species that had been enemies for now worked side by side. Children grew up in a galaxy where the strong helped the weak instead of crushing them. It was not perfect, it would never be perfect, but it was better. And it all began with a young species that refused to bow, refused to conquer, and refused to forget. The stars remembered. And so did humanity.